Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel rejects a UN draft resolution presented by New Zealand, stressing the only way to resolve the decades-old conflict with the Palestinians is through direct negotiations. Top diplomats from the United States, Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran meet to try and start a political process for the Syria conflict. Turkish police storm opposition media stations ahead of a parliamentary election next week. Israeli ambassador to the United Nations Dani Danon rejected a draft resolution introduced last night by New Zealand to the UN Security Council, which calls on Israel and the Palestinians to end the violence and called it destructive. Danon said in an interview to the Associated Press that the only way to achieve peace was through direct talks between the sides, and the best way to reduce the tension in the region was for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to accede to Prime Minister Netanyahu's call to meet with him. In the New Zealand draft resolution, Israel and the Palestinians are called on to put an end to the acts of violence, to refrain from incitement and provocative actions, and to defend civilians. Israel was called on to end the expansion of Jewish settlements on lands the Palestinians want for a future state, and the Palestinians were called on to refrain from going to the International Criminal Court against Israel. Meanwhile, violence continues between Palestinians and Israeli security forces in the West Bank cities of Ramallah and Hebron. Palestinians set tires ablaze and hurled stones at Israeli troops, whom responded with crowd dispersal means. 5 Palestinians were reportedly injured during the clashes, while no injuries were reported among the Israeli troops. In other news, the IDF permitted 200 Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque today. A senior Israeli official said on the matter that the decision to permit the Gazans' entry to Jerusalem's holiest shrine was a clear indicator of the commitment by the Jewish state to preserve the status quo and the adherence by Israel to safeguard freedom of worship. Now, with regard to the Syrian conflict, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, together with the top diplomats of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the Islamic Republic of Iran, at the new round of international talks on Syria's civil war in Vienna. The talks in Vienna are focusing on ending Syria's 4-year civil war, in which the United States and its Western and Gulf allies are at odds with Russia and its regional supporters, including Iran. The talks are also the first time Iran and Saudi Arabia, which are regional arch-rivals who have been deeply critical of each other's role in the crisis, have met across the table since the conflict began in Syria in March of 2011. Diplomats said that a possible outcome of the Vienna talks was a plan for pushing the Syrian negotiations forward. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, during an official 2-day visit to Spain, urged the countries taking part in the Syria talks in Vienna to put aside their national perspectives in an effort to end the civil war.
I'm urging all these 5 countries to show their global leadership rather than their own national perspectives. The longer they take their own national perspectives, the much more people will suffer, and whole world will suffer.
According to the United Nations, the bloody conflict in Syria has already claimed the lives of more than 250,000 people. In related news, the EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, who also arrived to partake in the meetings on Syria, said the talks were a breakthrough for the fact that it is being held, adding that she hopes it will lead to a political process that would solve the Syrian crisis.
I just had a bilateral meeting with Minister Zarif. I believe it is very important that tomorrow here in Vienna we will have all the relevant actors, both regionally and internationally relevant actors, playing around the same table. trying to define a common space for the beginning of a political process to find a solution to the crisis in Syria. Let's see if the work we have done in coordination with the US, with Russia in these days, in these weeks, allows us to open this political space and creates the possibility for a follow-up, for the beginning of a process that can lead us to a political transition in Syria. This is already a very relevant starting point. That only 1 week ago it was very difficult to anticipate. So I would invite everybody to take this as already a very relevant step that we need to, I think, protect, show, as Secretary General Ban Ki-moon indicated, with some flexibility, and allow this political space to grow and to bring results.
Now to Israel's western neighbor, where voting for the first phase of Egyptian parliamentary elections ended after a runoff where 200 parliamentary seats are being competed for. The first round of polls ended last week with no clear winner emerging, while the final results for the first phase were announced last night. The second round of voting, covering 13 other districts, will take place next month. According to political analysts in the country, candidates loyal to President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi are widely expected to dominate the end results. Now to Israel's eastern neighbor, where 8 people were killed and more than a dozen were injured after 2 containers filled with fireworks exploded in the Jordanian capital Amman. The explosion took place in the yard of Jordan's Customs Department, where 2 trucks carrying fireworks had parked. Plumes of thick black smoke were seen rising from the explosion site as firefighters tried to contain the flames. Jordanian Prime Minister Abdullah Ansul has requested a committee to investigate the causes of the fire, adding that the import of fireworks to Jordan was illegal. Now to Turkey, where 2 television channels, which are part of an opposition media company, went black, and 2 newspapers from the same group were blocked from being distributed after Turkish police stormed the group's offices days before the anticipated election in the country in a crackdown on media outlets that oppose President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Turkish authorities said the move was part of an investigation into Koza İpek conglomerate, a network of a US-based cleric who is accused by the Turkish president of trying to topple him. A US-based Turkish opposition group warned the latest raid on the media group in Istanbul was an attempt by the Turkish leadership to prevent the reporting of election fraud ahead of the parliamentary election.
This latest seizure of a leading media organization is the latest step in the going authoritarianism of Erdogan regime. Erdogan has took control or otherwise pressured many media organizations before, and this is simply the latest step in trying to control all the media in Turkey. He has little stomach for criticism. He does not tolerate criticism at all. So this is one of the few remaining independent media outlets, and now it's also under control of Erdogan's supporters.
The parliamentary election in Turkey are scheduled to start on Sunday. Thank you for watching us. You can also watch us at TV7israelnews.com or TV7.fi. For any comments, please send your emails to israelnews@tv7.fi. For more updates from Israel and the region, please join our Facebook page at TV7 Israel News. Praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hessen. Have a Erev Tov and Shabbat Shalom. And we will see you again on Monday at the same time.